We're now pricing out young people, senior citizens. I've taken phone calls, heartbreaking phone calls, about senior citizens being locked out of their home. So that is why I was so happy last year that we were able to institute the property tax freeze for senior citizens. Let me see a show of hands. Who in here is over 62 and has applied for the senior tax freeze? Good. Is there anyone in here that's over 62 and owns property that hasn't? Okay, you all should get on it right away because you have till the end of the year, but there's already a backlog, and I want you to get that done as quick as possible. Yes, ma'am.
We're here, and we are going to be tracking everything with this wild card game series as the Royals take on their first.
We're not taking down any, and we still, they're over the 15%. Okay, if you go ahead and file the freeze, even, I mean, you pay the higher rate, or the higher amount now. What happens if the tax exemption is lower, and we froze them at a higher rate, then what?
Well, here's the great thing about the senior citizen tax rate. If it ever goes lower, that is now your new rate. And if it goes up higher, then you get that difference back. So there's no reason, in my mind, you shouldn't apply for your senior citizen tax credit as soon as possible. Because if it goes down later, you'll get that'll be your new quote-unquote baseline. Automatically. Yep. That's the new rate that's written into the state law. Yes, sir.
So I applied online on August 15th.
Yeah, and you haven't heard?
We got that message, stand by.
Okay.
John, I can probably take more.
Yeah. Let Sean answer that for you. You know, politicians, we love to talk, we love to hear our own voice. My main goal tonight is to hear what you guys are saying and take that back to the state because, you know, my parents live in Jackson County. They're senior citizens. I want them to be able to continue to live here. I want my kids to live here. And right now, with the way that we're seeing, people are going to move out, and then no one's going to want to live here, and then your home values are going to go down. So we need to get this fixed for Jackson County. Yes, ma'am.
So I called and asked that question about if I froze my rates, and they told me I would have to appeal it, that it wouldn't automatically go down. I would have to appeal it.
Well, according to state law, that your new rate should be that. Just like, has anyone been told my house is over $550,000, it doesn't qualify? Has anyone been told that by the state? Okay, good, because they can't do that anymore. So there's no limit on the home value. If the value goes down, that's your new rate. Yes, sir.
If the property is in the name of the trust of the person living there, why is that eligible?
Probably Sean's better than answer that question, but it should be.
I didn't hear the question. Some of the questions are probably answered in my presentation, which I think that we have a problem with the projector, because we have two laptops, both of us do presentation stuff all the time, and the projector's not seeing our laptops. So, by the way, Ashley is in the back. Ashley can handle helping some folks that want to apply for the senior tax freeze, like while you're here tonight, if you haven't already done it. Okay, so that's that back table. But Stacy, maybe I'll just wing it without the presentation for a minute.
We have chairs coming in.
There's chairs coming in.
Okay, maybe you already did this.
Yeah, what was it?
Everybody in here is from Jackson County, I assume. Who's from Blue Springs? Okay, Lisa. There you go. Okay, great. Great to have you, some people. And then Green Valley. Okay, well, great to have you guys here. And then Sean's going to make a presentation.
Independence.
Independence. How do we forget about independence? I see that guy all the time.
I'm so sorry for you.
That's you're one of my favorites, and I got you.
By the way,
we're working on getting more chairs in here, like John said. So what was the question that John said I should answer?
It was if property is in the name of a trust, living trust, why is it eligible?
So it is. As long as, so you have to provide it. So the question was, if the property is in a trust, why isn't it eligible for the senior tax freeze? It is. So what happens is that there's one more document you have to provide. The normal process for applying for the senior tax credit is that you need your driver's license to prove your age, or some other document, passport, whatever, September 1st. So that was the first day where we could really start processing applications. Before that, we had to hire staff, 7 staff to process these applications. And the other thing that has happened, if anybody was here and heard a prior presentation, and we are having all the luck with the audio-visual stuff today. Now the mic's flipping out. Where was I going with that? Oh, hired people, thank you. Had to develop a process to scan all the applications, have them electronically monitored. We had to teach people what the approval process was. So we've got all that kind of humming along now, from what I understand. We're fully staffed. Is the microphone?
I'd like to get one.
Is the microphone back on? See, I'm an expert. It's just So the other rule that changed, not at the state level, but it was our county collector, when we first were introducing the program to people. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. For the people on Zoom, I have another mic. So when this process was first adopted, what we were told was people would have to reapply every year. So you might have heard that. The county collector has now said that the county's policy will be, once you're enrolled, we will continue to, when you're eligible, unless we hear otherwise, your home gets sold via the deed record.
Can I make a quick comment?
And he will audit to see if people are abusing that. Like if you move out of the house and change your voter address, but you leave your kids in the house and pretend that you're still there and that you're still eligible, technically you're not anymore. So he's planning to audit that. He reserves the right to change that rule and make you apply every year if he sees an excessive abuse. So but for now, we're trying to be as nice as we can.
I want to make one comment. I have a question. I'll believe that when I see it, but I'm optimistic. And then Sean, to the question of if you apply by the end of the year, you should be good, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
But so apply by the end of the year, but like you just heard, we've got 15,000 people that have applied already. We have 7 people, right? So if everybody suddenly jumps in and tries to apply December 31st, that's not going to be good for anybody. So really, it would be best if you apply sooner as opposed to later.
Do it today.
I think yes.
What became of the McLean lawsuit, and what about those of us who never had our properties inspected?
Yeah. So the questions were what happened with the Ken McLean lawsuit. So Ken McLean is an attorney whose firm filed a class action suit fairly early in the reassessment process in 2023, and it was thrown out. Man, this is just. Is it better if I just yell? Yeah. All right. No. All right. I'll keep trying to use them up. When, and this has happened in the past also, when people try to file a lawsuit about the things the county has done wrong in the appeals process, judges, for the most part, rule that until you've been to the BOE and lost, and to the state tax and lost, that you're not allowed to appeal to the court. The exception to that was the way the Attorney General went about it. He had legal standing to represent the State Tax Commission. The lawsuit that the Attorney General filed, the STC, the State Tax Commission, was actually the plaintiff suing the county along with the Attorney General. So anyway, the McLean lawsuit was dismissed because they determined that they hadn't gone through the process of the BOE and the STC for the people in the class of that class action lawsuit. And what was your second question?
Those of us who've never had our properties inspected.
Yeah, so many people have indicated that they didn't have their properties inspected. I will tell you that my belief is that essentially nobody or very few people really had their properties inspected in accordance with the law. So some folks have Ring doorbells and cameras around their homes and say, I know nobody came in to my yard for a full 2-year period. In my case, I have cameras around my yard and I'm pretty sure, but I can't honestly say that I reviewed every time an animal walked through because I have tons and tons of videos that amount to nothing. And so what the county claimed is that they inspected properties from 21 and 22, getting ready for the 2023 reassessment. and determining the value of your home as of January 1st, 2023. The only evidence we see is a picture generally, right? One picture. And unfortunately, some county attorneys advised the BOE that that was sufficient evidence that an inspection had taken place. But if you read the state law, that's not the case. And that was one of the key things that made the STC issue the order that said we had to roll everything back. So bottom line is, if you appealed to the BOE and didn't get an answer you wanted, and then appealed to the STC, then the STC might consider whether or not you were properly inspected and had proper notice of that inspection. But the BOE folks, for the most part, they were ignoring whether or not an inspection took place. One of the reforms that I want to make at the county level is to instruct the BOE that they have to have positive proof that a proper inspection, a full inspection took place. So, and you had a question.
This is a separate one. In lieu of the document for the trust, can you file the deed showing the trust and the ownership?
I don't know the answer to that. So the question was, home is in a trust, and maybe I don't have or don't want to show the trust document. Can I show the deed? And I honestly don't know if that's sufficient evidence, because I think the deed will only show that the trust owns the property, right?
But it also has my name on the deed as a trustee.
So it has his name on the deed as a trustee. This is getting into an area where I would say it's beyond my specific knowledge. What I know is we've been told, have a copy of your trust document, have at least the page that shows you as having the ownership interest, because I suppose a trustee is not the same as an owner. Somebody else can be designated as the trustee of a trust while you have an ownership interest in that trust. So I don't think that would work, to be honest.
Should I just wait till I hear from them, or should I try to file a business? File a trust document?
The question was, so it sounds like you already submitted your deed. And is the trust name close to your own name? So the trust is based, some trusts are just a completely different name. I think that might squeak through. I would keep an eye on your email, and if you provided a phone number to the county, keep an ear out, because I think if you're missing something the county thinks you need, then they're going to be notifying you. So we have no presentation, right? We're winning on all fronts. Hey, Donna, do you mind stepping out and letting them know there's a problem with the projector and see if they can help with that? So I'm going to look at my slides just to remind myself the things that I thought were appropriate to talk about. And then I suspect that Stacy has some content as well. And while I do this, I'm going to tell you that Jon will be asking for your input too. And in his defense, he has no idea what I'm about to say. So, yeah. So you have a question?
Pizza gone? Huh? No. Any kind of a refund?
So the question is there any chance of a refund because of the outstanding lawsuits? So where we're at right now is that the State Tax Commission ordered the county to roll things back. The county's appealed that. Assuming that the county loses that appeal, that's with the courts. And by the way, the judge for that was just assigned Friday, right? So this is real time, right? If the case that the county filed is dismissed, or the trial goes on and the county loses, then we will have to reimburse you. And what is that? What I had proposed when the STC order first came out is that rather than trying to issue refund checks, which have security problems, you remember the IRS has kind of gone away from mailing people checks for that exact reason, because people were stealing them out of mailboxes. Well, imagine if we were suddenly sending 75% of the households in Jackson County a refund check, people would be going through your mailboxes, right? So what I suggested for both administrative ease and security is that we do it as a credit on your next tax bill. I thought that was going to be 2024. At this point, with this appeal that the county filed against the legislature's will, I don't know what we will do if and when we finally prove victorious in that. So if it's a check, would you report it as income? It gets a little complicated, right? Because some of us deduct our taxes from on our 1040, and now you pay less taxes. I don't want to give you IRS advice because I actually have an accounting degree, and I might get myself in real trouble with that. So blue shirt, and then behind her pink shirt.
On the same site where you can go in to apply for the freeze, there's a form for the Jackson.
Wasn't gonna be.
It's an application for credit balance, request for refund. I filled all that in. I sent it to Scott Layton, the collector. He sent me an email back telling me that was a fraudulent sign, but it's still up.
Yeah, so the question was, there's this form that says, give me a refund, right, basically, and send it to the county collector. So that form was actually developed by a private party. He did so as part of a tactic to possibly give another lawyer an opportunity for legal action in the future. We always understood that it was likely the collector would reject those, but then that they could become yet another way that we could try to make the county do the right thing. So that's why you got that letter that said that wasn't a valid form. And then pink shirt.
Okay, you said that the meeting today ended in a recess. When does recess end?
Yeah, so for those who maybe got here a little late, I kind of conveyed how things went at the county today. So today was essentially, tomorrow technically, the deadline for the county to set a levy rate. I proposed an amendment to what the administration asked for. The amendment would have cut our levy rate in half. Now understand, this is not a huge thing on your personal property tax bill because the county only keeps about 7% of the taxes that we collect. So us cutting one of the levies we collect in half would have been $25, right? It wasn't going to be a huge deal, but it was going to be some leverage so we could get the administration to withdraw the lawsuit. The exciting thing that happened was that we didn't pass anything and we went into recess. Unfortunately, I left to come here, and what I found out was that they reconvened, and they had one of the votes that was with me to not have a levy. They changed their mind and they voted to put the levy forward. So it was intended as a leverage point for me to get the administration to withdraw that appeal so we could fix this once and for all. All the way in the back, the orange.
So, try to get this straight. The county is using our money to fight this lawsuit?
Yes.
Against us?
Yes.
That's what this is, we got your bill.
So the question was, the county's using taxpayers' money to fight a taxpayer relief that was ordered by the State Tax Commission. That is absolutely true. How's that legal? John, can you make that illegal at the state level? I don't know.
Hey, we'll try. It's, well, you made the point that I've been making to everybody I can talk with. It's like our government is using our taxpayer dollars to work against us, which is the totally maddening thing about all this. I really do appreciate what Sean is doing at the legislature. I mean, he's the one fighting for us. I think there's some other ones. Manny Abarca, I think, is doing a good job. But you said exactly what I'm saying to all my neighbors, and I don't know what to do about it. We have the legislature doing what they're doing. Some people are trying to do the right thing, but yeah, it's the maddening thing.
So, there won't jail time?
I don't know about jail time, but yeah, I think Sean's trying to do the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So one thing that's supposedly out there as a possibility, that I don't want to get anybody's hopes up, but that is that the state's attorney general does have the power to remove people from office. You saw him do it with the prosecutor in St. Louis. And so it's possible that things could go that direction. I think the more the county administration prolongs this, harms taxpayers, after they have been told now by the county legislature that they broke the law. They've been told by a judge in Cass County, those that live in Independence or Blue Springs, you guys filed a lawsuit, and the county was not told to do anything different, but the judge said, yep, county broke the law. And now they've been told by the state tax commission, an administrative branch, that they didn't do things properly. So every branch of government, from the state to the county to the courts, have said, you did it wrong, fix it, and they're still resisting. So
The state auditors.
the state auditors as well, yep. So all the way.
Can we, pass an amendment that actually makes this illegal, go up and over their head and actually pass something by the people and for the people?
Yeah, so I will tell you, I've got a series of reforms so that this can never happen again that I'm gonna introduce and pass. And I say pass, obviously that's contingent on my efforts as a county legislator. And then there are things that I'm advocating for to get introduced at the House of Representatives with Mr. Patterson in charge, hopefully. So I mean, this is all hands on deck. There's a lot of people trying to fix this. And what I hate is when government creates a problem, it takes a long time to fix it. And what's really terrible in this instance is that the government's actively working against us to try to say they didn't do anything wrong, even though it's pretty clear that they did. Gray shirt.
Yes, sir. Couple things. You have a get out of jail free card right now with the rollback to 15%. What the county's gonna do is they're just gonna raise taxes 14.9 until they get you up to the mill rate in the future. Now, what that means with the Hancock Amendment, you're over 62 over time, your taxes are actually gonna go down because you're locked at a rate and tied with the mill rate. Everybody else's house is going up under 62, you'll actually pay less. Now, I'm the exception in this room. I'm from Kansas City, and I'm not subject to the Hancock Amendment. And when my value goes up 80%, my taxes for the school district goes up 80%.
Right.
In the mid 2000s, we passed a constitutional amendment for St. Louis that got rid of the waiver for St. Louis City or the city of St. Louis, and they're now subject to the Hancock Amendment, and they also got local control of their police in the mid 2000s. Be nice to get that, so my taxes don't keep going up.
There's your state guy.
Yeah, does everybody understand what he's saying? Because he lives in Kansas City, it's this one area where if we're in Jackson County, there's the Board of Equalization. But for Kansas City, if the assessment goes up 8%, you go up 8%. If it goes up 20, you go up 20. Believe it or not, we have filed bills to help Kansas City, but there are some powerful forces that want to keep that in place. Yeah.
And those will be on their side.
Yeah, well, I think we can discuss that, but yeah, you're in a bad situation with the Kansas City deal.
By the way, I was just told they're gonna open up the wall. Can we get a round of applause? Hey, can I?
Hey, I just really want to compliment all of you in this room. When we start showing up like this, then there's going to be change at Jackson County. And when we start voting, then there'll be change.
Yeah. Oh.
So the young lady got to reach form online, so does that mean we're not supposed to? Or are we supposed to?
Yeah, so
This is valid?
this is a specific form that is a refund request form. It's not on a county website. It's on a Facebook site and another file sharing site. And if you decide to fill it out, there's no harm. There is no harm in filling it out. So, lots of questions. I'm gonna go back in the black polo shirt. That's you.
So, who approved the $17.9 million to pay Tyler? And what actions being taken against them?
Yeah, so the question was who approved the $17.9 million to pay Tyler and what actions being taken against them. So the prior legislative group, 6 of the 9 legislators currently weren't in office back when they did that. That was in 2021. And I will tell you that Tyler has software, and I think their software in terms of like storing information about your house and having pictures and all that stuff. That side of it's fine. And our old system was so bad that it was creating problems in and of itself. By the way, they're gonna be opening up this wall, so if you're near there, be cautious. Anyway, so most of the money that we paid to Tyler was for labor. They were the ones in most cases going out and doing these inspections, value reviews of your home. What I believe is that after we get your taxes rolled back, and maybe after we get a different person in charge of the county, then we might be in a position to bring a lawsuit against Tyler, because I don't believe they performed everything they were supposed to perform in accordance with their instructions. But we did need their software, to be honest. We just shouldn't have had the same people who were providing the software, doing the inspections, and then sitting with you and defending the values that their software. The people who were previously in office. Yeah, the prior group, there's 3 that are still on there. But I will say, so I come out of the software industry. Had I been a legislator then, I probably would have taken a different approach. But for people that weren't in the software industry, don't regularly contract for millions and millions of dollars, I don't think that the legislature should have known better. There was some issues, in my opinion, with the administration and how that whole thing was done, where the blame really lies. Yeah. We're making a little bit of noise, so I didn't quite hear you. Look at that, there's just people already over there. And they get tables and probably dinner later. So thank you guys so much for helping with that, by the way. So I didn't really catch your question.
So should the county people have had a say on monies that?
Yeah. So the question is, should the county people have had a say? And I think you're asking if citizens should vote for that. We vote to spend your tax money all the time. That's our job as legislatures, right? And kind of making those decisions, and in a lot of cases, we rely on staff. And oh my gosh, not only is it bigger, but it's also cooler over here. So, like I'm sweating. You guys are throwing some tough questions at me. I see a lot of questions. Now that we've got our slide deck maybe working, can we advance? I'm just gonna go through a couple of things because I don't want this just to be about the property tax issue. We have huge issues, right? And I can answer questions like this. I love it. It's sick that I love it, but I have poured my whole life and soul into this. But there's some other things that I think it's important we talk about too. One of which, although we only have a couple people here maybe from Kansas City, what Kansas City does with local ordinances impacts other places. How? Well, this might shock you guys. Kansas City approved in the last 14 months 11 new single-family home residential permits.
Only 11.
That's catastrophic. So when you don't build new houses, what happens to the values of the houses around you is they go up because people still want to buy houses, right? So there was legislation passed recently. You want to talk about source of income?
We will. We
Okay.
have that here.
Okay.
So we'll let you talk about that first.
So I'm just setting context that part of the reason John's here is that, and part of the reason Stacy's here, is that some of the things Kansas City has done recently are going to cause more problems, not just for Kansas City, but for people in the greater Kansas City area, because as they restrict development, that's going to cause your property values in the suburbs to go up because there's going to be people that want to buy near Kansas City, right? So there's state legislation that is looking to come in over the top and help with that, hopefully. The other thing that is, this is the only federal thing I'm going to talk about, it's part of my platform, and that is, for the first time ever, over the last 5 to 10 years,
huge institutional investors, companies that have trillions of dollars worth of assets, have decided that a good place to park their money is in single-family homes. So they buy them and they turn you guys into renters. So if you or your kids want to go buy a new house and you got to get a loan, you got to come up with a down payment, and you've got a $1 trillion corporation that's going to outbid you and doesn't have to borrow money, what's going to happen? Right? The prices are going to go up. It's going to be harder to own a home. Now I got to remember you guys are over here. The piece of federal legislation that I want to enact basically says that no company that has over $500 million in assets can own single-family residential houses, period. So it'll take time to change, but it has to change. So.
Is that US businesses
It's about time the
Sure.
government starts
You have a camera?
Amen to that.
Yeah. Oh, you have a phone?
So it would be any business wanting to buy any single-family residential home in the United States, whether they're a US business or a foreign corporation, they shouldn't be buying single-family homes. If they're, home ownership is the foundation of most people's budgets, and it becomes one of the most important factors in accumulating wealth and then being able to pass wealth on to your kids and being able to have a secure retirement. So we have to protect things from a insurance cost perspective. We have to protect things from a not letting competitors in the market that are killing the market perspective. And we have to do things here locally with your property taxes. Gentleman in the back.
I was overseas, and in that country, the same situation happened. And what they did was they put a preference of individuals wanting to buy for the first time, and then open it up to the other tiers.
Yeah.
Something like that possible?
Yeah, so that might be an improvement. And I'm all about crowdsourcing, guys. I learn a lot. And if you guys have better ideas, tell me. I don't have an ego in this. I just want to figure out the right thing to do. So what the gentleman said was, in another country where he previously resided or visited, they had essentially a two-tiered system where first-time home buyers, people who are going to live in the property, got preferential treatment. And then if there was no buyers like that, then somebody else could come in and buy. So that's a great idea. John, do you want to talk some more?
Sure.
I'm getting tired, and you guys are making me sweat.
Ask if you want to go ahead and do your presentation in the front. So we
Sure.
can be orderly now.
So we be orderly. Absolutely. So you have my original kind of gray slides? Okay. Now our clicker's not working. All of the technology is going to eat us one day.
I have to tell you all, Matt Manfoni here is the one who is helping with all of our technology. So we're extremely grateful to him. He happens to be a property manager. So for property manager, this is your guy. And this lady right here, you've been absolutely wonderful. Please tell me your name.
I'm Tasha.
Tasha has been patient. She's been kind, trying to accommodate us in this space. So Tasha, she smiled the whole time. So we appreciate you. Just as kind as she wanted to be. Her manager came in today. Megan, the manager came in tonight. Megan, thank you for
Hi, Megan.
For opening the walls. We appreciate it. Great.
Speaker has a mic.
Oh, will this work in the room? Hello?
Can you guys hear that?
Well, I'm not as important as hearing from them, but we can work on this a little bit later.
Okay.
I want to make sure we can hear. True. Time bomb.
Ticking time.
I'm getting Sean to his point, his presentation. Here we go.
Okay.
Here's your,
Is that my clicker?
we're in business.
Okay. See if I know which button to push. Is it that one?
To the right.
Yeah.
Advances.
Okay. So really, this is the one slide that I want to use out of this. And I know it's pretty far for you guys to see, so I'm going to do hand puppets to explain it as I go as well. So what this shows is how the senior tax credit works. Because it's a little different than some people think. Some people think we're going to freeze your assessed value, and that's not how it works. What we're going to do is say your assessed value in 2023 was $400,000, and based on that, you owed $6,500 in taxes. And then in 2025, because we only reassess every 2 years, we determine your house value's gone up to $450,000. If you didn't have the senior tax credit program, your new taxes would be, for example, $7,000. So they would go up by $500, the difference between $6,500 and $7,000, right? So with the senior tax credit, same property, doing the same thing, 2023, it's valued at 400,000. And then in 2023, 6,500 in taxes, right? Nothing changed there. But now you have the senior tax credit. When 2025 comes along, your home goes up to 450, because that's really what happened in the market. But you get a $500 credit on your property tax bill. So even though your taxes are $7,000, the county is basically eating the extra 500. That's exciting in 2025. Now think about this. If you're 62, 64, 68, 70, and you live to be 100, what's gonna happen to the value of your home over the next 30 years, right? So this is a huge program, but it is a huge program over time. So when people think, oh, I'm worried about 2024, and I understand, and we're working to fix it, but in the meantime, understand that this program is extremely valuable, especially over the long haul. And then the last thing, man, is that better? Hello? Hey.
I didn't think it would come that loud. This is another one, so this is for whoever also needs that.
That better? So. Hello? Hey.
Thank you.
That handheld might need a new battery.
It might be. It's actually got a crack in it. Can you guys, you can only hear me if I point it at me. That's a very inconvenient lav mic. Wow. Okay. I don't know what to tell you guys on the mic problems. So what this is showing is a question that was getting asked to me every time I would present this, and that is, what happens if the value of my home goes down? It only works when you don't want it to. So I'm going to talk really, really loud, and I hope everybody can hear me.
Cut out and miss it, but we catch most of the words on it.
Okay, she has me back on this mic. You guys really are, you guys and the electronic malfunctions really are making me sweat. So similar example, 2023, $400,000 house, $6,500 in taxes, right? And then this shows what happens when you go up in 25, 7,300 in taxes, pick a number, you're eligible for the credit if you have a senior tax credit. But if the value of your home goes down, then the new tax amount becomes the new value or the new tax amount that you're frozen at. So let's just say your home value gets cut in half. Real estate crash, like 2004, 8, whatever year it was. So suddenly your property taxes go way down, right? Whatever that new lower amount is, that's the amount that you're gonna pay from there on forward. You don't have to apply or reappeal. What I will tell you is that presuming the state tax commission order gets enforced and we have to roll everybody back to 2022 levels plus 15% at the max, that's gonna lower your property bill and that's gonna be your new permanent amount. That's why this lawsuit in this STC order is so, so important. We're really trying to protect you for the rest of your life. Yeah?
Now, how can we support this lawsuit a little bit more on this? Because I got a fairly on social media.
Yeah.
Because I know I served as part of this.
Yeah.
I think it's so important that the people work together and start working against these correct politicians and vote for it.
So the question is, how do we support the lawsuit? Once it's in the courts, I tell you, outside interference, people trying to influence a judge is bad. So that part of it, not really. You want to put some pressure on the county executive and his staff and say, withdraw the lawsuit. That's why I took the county to the brink of bankruptcy today, was thinking if I've got him over the fire and his only choice is to withdraw the lawsuit, that's what I'm doing, right? And I will tell you that's not the only creative idea that I have. And when I get the next one, this one kind of came up by accident over the last 12 hours. But if I get another great idea and some pressure from the public will help. If you follow me on Facebook, Sean Smith for Congress right now. If I lose in November, it'll go back to being Sean Smith County Legislator. That's the Facebook page. I also have a newsletter that you can email me at the county and keep up with this stuff. I'm doing my best to bring that pressure at the right times, but for the lawsuit, I wouldn't try because judges hate to try to have somebody trying to force them to do something through public pressure. Yes, ma'am.
Can you clarify, because I know more about federal politics than some of the local?
Okay.
Who is Frank White as far as his position?
Yeah.
And is he up for reelection?
Okay, so the question is who's Frank White? And okay, question is, what's Frank's position? Is he a federal? So he is the county executive. I'm trying with the microphone, it's doing nothing now.
You
And
said you have your cell phone on you, that may be interfering a little bit.
I'm gonna say this, if this mic works perfectly after I threw my cell phone on the floor, then I'm gonna like sell all my Apple stock, right? Because anyway, so Frank White, the county executive, isn't up for re-election until 2026. He's elected for a 4-year term, and a while back, I'm gonna throw this, yeah. I don't think it's batteries because the light is solid. It's like the base is cracked. So it's had some abuse, I'll just say that, it's had some abuse. Are you my neighbor on Hedgewood? Yeah, I thought so. That guy takes great care of his rose bushes. That's probably why his property value went up so high. The county executive's elected once every 4 years. The county executive's elected once every 4 years. We elected him in 2022. He had said he wouldn't run again after this. After the stadium vote went down, in a news interview with Fox 4, he did say he does plan to run again. He barely survived a primary in 2022. And I doubt that he would survive a primary in 2026, but he's famous for being a baseball player. And I will tell you, from my perspective, having run for office successfully once out of the 3 times that I've tried, the other 2 were for state rep. I was going to work with Jon, and that didn't work out so well. Anyway, there's an awful lot of people who really don't know who they're voting for. It's like president, we've all seen it, we know it. I don't care who you like, but you know something about those people. Your senator, probably knows something about them. Congress, maybe. Governor, maybe. You get down to the county executive level, county legislators, we're doing everything we can to let you know who we are, or at least some of us are, and it's really hard. I will just say that. So when it's time for elections, informing people, if you like me, go tell people. If you don't like me, go tell people, right? Seriously, because we want good people elected, and the only way that happens is for people who do know and are informed. My estimate from polling that I've seen is that 80% of the people who vote in every single election don't know anything about more than half the people they're voting for, right? So that's a job we as a public have to do better at. And I know because you're here, chances are you guys aren't part of that uninformed 80%. But you got friends that are. And so while we don't want to talk about politics anymore, we got to talk about politics, or at least about the people and what we've seen. So that would be my sincere request.
And Sean, you're not like, Sean, okay, I got 2 of them. Sean is not in my district, but he's probably one of the best, most dedicated elected officials I've ever seen. When we started doing tax appeal workshops, many of you, you're on our list because of that. But when we started doing tax appeal workshops, and I was putting out the word, telling people, here's what you need to do to. I did it. At first, I didn't get it.
Because if you yell and the mic's on you and then it comes on, now you're really,
yeah. Doing those workshops, and we're trying to get the word out so that people can come and appeal their taxes and know the proper way to do it, and having real estate agents there to help them. I'm looking around trying to find where people are. I'm looking at this man on Facebook all over it. He's helping not only his constituents, but he was helping whoever needed help. And that we're looking for elected officials. He is the model for me, which is why I'm here tonight, and which is why we're doing events like this. We're going to keep doing this to highlight those elected officials who are working for the people. He is one of them. And so, do you want to continue on your slide? Or
Nope, that's all the slide stuff that I had. I know that Stacy and John want to talk about some things also, and I'm happy to take questions. We kind of had this set up as Stacy being the moderator, and given the lack of microphones and tech challenges, we're winging it at this point, folks. I apologize, but hopefully we're doing a decent job.
Sheridan has it.
I do have a question, and I'll let you get back to that. And this might just be me not having the education on it, but the actual assessor, Ms. B.
Yes.
If Frank is going to stay in or whatever, can a new one be appointed in that amount of time? Is there talks of getting her out? That's part one. And then part two, I understand that they were going by the law, they have to raise it, this and that. Were we not making our necessary budget prior to that to need to go up 400%?
Yeah.
Or, you know, like, what is the deal with trying to get a hold on the actual assessment department?
Yeah. So.
Because didn't those bills come out late? And what's the?
Yeah. So there was a lot of issues with the assessment. For those who don't know, a gal named Gail McCann Beatty is our current assessor. We're the only county in Missouri that has an appointed assessor. If Frank is reelected, he can appoint her. He doesn't even have to. She can just continue in her job. She serves at his pleasure. We actually, as a county legislature, passed a measure that was going to be on the ballot in November that would have given you guys the opportunity to say, we would like to elect our assessor in the future. So I sponsored that. The legislature passed it with 5 votes. That's a majority. And Frank vetoed it. And unfortunately, it was right at the deadline. So it's not going to be on the ballot in November. This guy has another way that he might be able to fix it. So I'm going to let him talk about that.
All right. Well, I used to think there was a lot of drama in Jefferson City, but I'm starting to think the drama is at the county legislature with Sean. But Sean does a great job. Let me.
Can I do something really? I don't want to cut you off.
Oh, yeah.
We have someone in the room that I'd like to say a few words.
Oh, yeah.
Words briefly. He said, we're missing something. We have a former Jackson County legislator that is in the room, and he whispered something to me, and I said, would you say that out loud? He said, I don't work for him anymore. So he said, yes. And so,
come on over here, sir.
He never worked for him. So Ron Finley, the former legislator.
All right.
I have just a few words, some advice.
Come on up here, sir.
To answer one of the questions someone had.
The other provision you ought to be aware of, in the county charter, there is a recall provision. And I haven't studied it lately, but I know it's there.
You have to be an attorney.
I can talk about that.
Okay? You were talking about he's got so many years and this and that. There is a recall provision. And I believe, Sean, it's by petition.
Right. So the current law, Jackson County Charter.
I just like everybody to have the full.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely a good point. And I'll tell you why I didn't talk about it is because some folks actually started a recall petition against Frank White. What we needed was 54,000 signatures. Okay, and it's based on how many people voted in his election. And then a certain percentage of those people have to sign the petition. It's a very high number. There was people that worked on it for about 8 months. They had a Facebook group going called 7% Frank White Recall or something like that. I mean, they worked at it, and they worked at it. And they got about 8,000 signatures. Okay? So imagine them, and this is why I don't talk about it partially, Ron, is because for the people that really tried, like you can imagine when you spend your waking hours trying to get signatures, and there's 10, 12 people who are really devoted and another 20 or 30 that helped a little bit. And it was just, so anyway, it's a very high standard, but it is possible. And I will just tell you, back then, beginning of 24, let's say, what I said is I have to work with Frank. There's going to be other things besides this, so I'm not going to advocate for a recall specifically, although quietly I was kind of letting people know who called. But I thought, I got to work with the guy. I will tell you right now that I don't feel like there's any opportunity for me to work with him at this point. I have dedicated myself to this And we are so polar opposite, to the point where when the Attorney General filed the lawsuit, I said, I will testify, right? I was listed as a defendant because the whole legislature, the whole county government was listed as defendants, but I'm like, I'm testifying for the plaintiff. That put me in a very awkward position. Bottom line is that the administration now is doing their best to prevent me from doing any legislation on anything. I got 911 funds approved for the City of Independence so they could upgrade their equipment and respond to emergency calls. And the administration's like, yeah, we're not cutting that check, right? So they're taking it out on all of you because I'm doing what I'm doing, which is to try to correct the mess that's been created. So so my tone, I guess you'll say, has changed. He can't stay. He just can't. So.
And something else I'd like to say is when we get to the point where you have legislation, and it's gonna be helpful to have many voices, if we need to fill the room, the chambers, and testify, please let us know when we need to be there, because it needs to not only influence Frank, but any of your peers, because many times you need, 6 people, a total of 6 to move legislation at the county level. If there's something that we need to do, I ask you to always let us know. We can testify, we can send emails, we can do what we need to do that. At one point, we did a petition with over 2,000 signatures. And so people need to know that we are engaged, we are watching, and we ask you to let us know. And John, when you get back in Jeff City, when you need the same thing, let us know that as well, because we are here, we are organized, and we know how to reach each other when it's time to take the action.
Well, can I ask, are we getting everybody to contact?
No. We should vote for that.
So what is the question?
Are they term limits?
Oh, the county that term.
Oh, no term limit to the county level.
Possibly.
Okay.
Yeah. Can I ask, are we getting everybody's contact in here so that we can all reach everybody? Are we doing
I
that?
think Ashley has it. We have.
Are we
if everyone-
passing around let's pass one around.
If we get up on
Let
Zoom,
me ask this.
Or should
How
I
many of you
hold it?
registered in
Zoom is
advance?
still
How
good.
many
Should I
of you
hold this
registered?
for whoever's
We have most
speaking?
of you. If you don't have their
Just kinda-
email address, we'd like to ask, before you leave, if you would go back to Ashley,
Yeah.
who is Sean's legislative aide, if you could make sure she has your email address and a name. The most important thing we need is the email address. Everything else doesn't matter. So that way we can keep in touch with you as we go forward.
That's for Zoom.
Nova Wood, she has a website and sends out a newsletter. She keeps everything, including what you guys are doing.
That's right.
So,
Yeah.
if you're not on the list here, get on her list.
And she was also one of those hardworking people trying to work to get those signatures as well.
Yeah.
And so what we're gonna do, we're gonna hear from John, he's gonna do an overview, and then some of us who want to speak, like from the housing industry, we have specific things we want to talk about, we're gonna share those with feedback. And we're gonna open it up for anyone in the room, if you have a topic, either something we've talked about, or if there's something else that our elected officials need to hear from you and know, they are here tonight because they want to hear from you. There may be a brilliant idea sitting out here, we won't know until you say it, or you may have a question that a lot of people have that need to be answered. So we ask you, when it's time to answer questions or to ask questions, we ask that you please engage in the process, because you're definitely going to hear from those of us in the housing industry. So John's gonna do an overview, we're gonna take questions after that, then we're gonna present some things, and then we're gonna take more questions, okay?
Hey, this is great. I really appreciate you all being here and the great questions, and this is a lot of fun. This is a lot more fun than Jeff City. People like Dan Stacy, he's a representative. We get to hang out with him.
Where's Dan? Dan, stand up, Dan.
He doesn't have a chair.
He's from Blue Springs.
Are you running for election, or you? You're running for Senate. Okay, good to know, good to know.
So let me just tell you, I'm a state representative, so I go to Jeff City and work on state issues, and sometimes they affect what they do at the county level. Let me start with a piece of good news that I don't know that everybody in here knows. Okay? Who in here is on Social Security? Okay. Did you know, I know Farrell knows, but next year when you pay your taxes, you will not be taxed by the state on your Social Security income. Did you know that? There you go. It's always nice when you come and you get told you're paying less taxes, right? Sir?
Something that I would like to see, because I don't know about everybody else here, but I see the homeless all over the place. And I know that we are literally taxing people for their homes. How about we end property tax on single home families to shift that tax burden to the corporations and the profiteers? Make that taxation up in that area instead of forcing people out of their homes.
Yeah.
I think it's just wrong to tax people out of their homes, and I think we should end that.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. I think it's worth discussing, but I think realistically, we're going to be paying property taxes. And so we just want to make sure that they're fair. I just want to pay fair taxes because the taxes that we pay, they go to the school district, and I want our schools to be good. Okay, so I want fair taxes for people. And the numbers that I've seen, I know somebody that had it raised 200%. That's not fair in my mind. So that's why we have the senior tax freeze. So who in here didn't know that their Social Security isn't going to get taxed next year? Good. See, you guys got something. Next year, you will not owe state income tax on your Social Security. You'll still owe federal. Forever. So those are the kind of things that we're doing at the state, kind of lower people's taxes. Again, with bacon costing $8 a pound now, anything that keeps more money in your pocket really helps. Yes, sir.
On the tax issue, and a lot of people that hear this, in South Kansas City, they're adding $1 billion building to the nuclear plant out there and zero tax on the state, from the state. Why did they do that?
Yeah. Well, that was to exempt the sales tax on the stuff they buy. That didn't bother me that much because if you're the government and you're purchasing it, you're not paying sales tax on the stuff that you buy. So it really was no different on that. That's just sales tax on what they're buying. But they'll pay property tax.
You mentioned fairness.
Yes.
Well, I think one of the most unfair things about the whole process is that we get a tax bill 7 or 8 months after the date of the increase.
Yeah.
Now, most people, most young families pay their taxes with their mortgage payments.
Mm-hmm.
When the county sends the bill
Yeah.
to the mortgage company,
Yeah.
they just pay them.
Yeah.
And several months later, these people that are just struggling,
Yeah.
I'm talking about
Senior citizens?
families.
Yeah.
They get a bill from the bank saying that they owe $1,000 or $2,000 more. Why
Yeah.
can't you just change the date, effective date of the assessment to the following year? Instead of doing it in arrears,
Yeah.
do it in advance. Then people can make plans. They can make plans to do it. We
Yeah.
all know that it costs money to run the government.
Absolutely.
At all levels.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the most unfair things about the process
Yeah.
is that the politicians, whoever they are,
Yeah.
seem to be ignorant of the fact that this hurts people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
something can be done about it. And if it
Yeah.
isn't done about it, y'all are gonna be looking for a job.
Yeah, well, I agree with you, sir. Maybe someone from the county can probably address
And
that.
some of you won't get a job.
So I'm holding this because the people on Zoom can hear me then. So I will say that I believe that until somebody's appeal is done all the way through the process, however far they want to take that process, the county shouldn't be permitted to levy an increase on you. And I like your idea even better where presently we reassess every odd year, but we tax you every year. And what you're basically saying is do the 23 assessment, let you know what your value is, let you know what your tax estimate is going to be, but it doesn't go up based on that increase until 24, which you would pay at the end of 24. So it gives you time to figure out in your household budget how you're going to accommodate that. And it would give more time to have the appeals process be fully completed so that we're not, because there's a lot of people who had to pay the full tax bill because the county still couldn't get through all the appeals we had. So this would alleviate that as well. So I would have to work in cooperation because some of this is state requirements, how we do it, and some of it would be how the county could choose to do it. So I'll work with Mr. Patterson and some other state legislators that I know to see if we can make something like that happen. To me, it's all about stability, predictability, and accuracy. And the accuracy is the one word that when the assessment was happening, I never heard the assessor use. She used the word fairness a lot. It's pretty subjective, right? She would use other words like equity. Again, pretty subjective, but accurate is kind of a well-known thing. You know, I mean, if I can sell this property for this amount of money, that's how much it should be for. So I have a series of reforms that I think I can do at the county level and some that I want to cooperate with the folks at the state level to introduce.
See, we're all tired of hearing the excuse that that's a state level, that's a county problem. We want the problems fixed.
I understand. And I'm, yeah.
And it's not just me, everybody I think feels the same.
And I feel exactly the same way. I've been at this a year and a half. That's how long I've been in government. John's a little bit longer, but I mean,
John's not the problem, believe me.
And
John's doing a great job.
We're trying to accelerate change. And you see, I said at the beginning, government changes slowly, and some of it is the kind of resistance you see, even as I just try to get our county administration to just do the right thing. And why? I can only tell you that there's humans involved and that they're a pain in the ass sometimes.
Okay, can we do maybe one or two more questions and have John finish, and then keeping in mind we will have time for questions at the end.
Yeah, you sure? Sure.
I've got one question. How in the hell did you get an assessment? We lived in our house since 1997, and nobody in it, around it. If they have an assessed picture, it's taken from the road.
Yeah.
The house was built in 1950.
You get an assessment? You're in one? Yeah, Sean said just email.
Email my office. I want to look at. Okay, I want to look at your BOE file and kind of see what we did in your particular case. So there's supposed to have been somebody that comes to your property. By state law, if they're going to increase your value by more than 15% given year, that's the only time we have to be there, is if it's going to go up by more than 15%, we're supposed to notify you 30 days in advance, let you know when we're coming, offer you an opportunity for us to come in if you think that that would help you. Like if you have a terrible interior, but the exterior looks great, then you might want to invite us in, but it's never mandatory. What we didn't do, we didn't notify people 30 days in advance. We didn't observe all portions of the property as required by law. The law does give us an out to see all portions of the property, like if it's a gated home and the gate's closed and says no trespassing. But imagine this, if we notified you and told you when we were coming and you had agreed, then even a no trespassing sign, you'd probably open the gate for us, right? So bottom line is that's how it's supposed to work. And the assessor, in my opinion, didn't make sure that the people working for her did all those steps properly. So, yeah.
And it's 11 months in arrears.
Yeah, there's a young man back there, and then let me talk about what we're doing. Sir.
I appreciate both of you being here tonight, but I did hear a minute ago, John said that, government works slowly, but nobody's taxes went up slowly.
Yeah. Absolutely true. For those at home, he said government works slowly except when their taxes go up.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you, and I think Sean agrees with you, and Sean's doing everything we can. It's just the system that we have to work in, and now it's in the courts.
The system that made our taxes go up, we all have.
Absolutely, yeah. I agree with you completely.
Why don't we hear a little bit from you, John?
Yeah.
We'll take a couple of questions then, and then we're going to go through, some of us have things to say to get reaction as well.
Oh, okay. Let me just say what I'm going to say about the state, because they wanted me to talk about the state a little bit. Let me ask in here, is anybody in here a landlord? Do you have rental property? Okay, a lot of people. Great. Okay, good. So one of the things that we did at the state, has anybody ever had a squatter? Okay, good. Well, one of the things that we did at the state was we said if you have someone that's there illegally, that you can call the sheriff and that they can get them out within 48 hours. So that's one of the laws that we've had. Yes, ma'am. What's that? It was effective in August.
And
Yeah.
that works the same in Kansas City?
That's state law.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Do you have a number on that law?
Senate Bill 196, I believe. We'll get that for you, but it's signed, no, it's actually a House bill. We'll get that number to you, but it's one of the 20 or so bills that the governor signed into law. Let me ask you this, all the landlords, have you ever had to evict someone?
Yes.
Okay, so remember when Kansas City said that you now can't evict someone, when they had that eviction moratorium? Well, we passed a state law that said they can no longer do that. You have rights as a property owner. You should be able to evict someone through the legal process and get that done. So the city can no longer say again, you can no longer evict a bad tenant. So that's one of the laws that we passed. Yes, ma'am.
A question that relates to the taxes, the property tax will be in basically frozen at 62, even though it shows up as a credit. Does that, if you're a landlord, does that apply to all of the houses?
No, just your house that you live in. Yeah.
Because that's to get the tax
and then
credit
the third thing that
for age 62
we're trying to do is,
landlords, it does not.
who in here has ever voted for a Jackson County assessor?
No one.
No one. That's a trick question. I believe it's a fundamental principle of democracy that we should be able to elect our representatives who are affecting our lives. Sean has tried to do it at the county level. I am trying to do it at the state level, that we can elect our assessor. We are the only county in the state that doesn't elect their assessor. This is taxation without representation. It needs to change. Unfortunately, yes.
Response to the question that I asked about.
Yeah.
Like, what is going to be done going forward with Gail Beatty?
Well, that's the current laws are in place until we pass a law that says we can elect our assessor. She is in there rightfully and legally.
So we're just a few months away from the next assessment.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm just like, is there talk with Frank to talk about what she's gonna do different this time, at least to get the bills out on time, or just like? Yeah,
that I'll let Sean address that, but the rules are in place. We're a country, we're a rule of law. These are the rules that we have. So we have Gail, but what I'd like to do is change it so that we all get a say and get to hold our assessor accountable, just like every other county in the state. Yes, ma'am.
Do we want Sean to answer Kitty? But she's gonna bring it up again. She's not
Okay.
gonna forget this one. Can we have
Yeah.
Sean just
she's my
respond?
neighbor, I'll go at her house.
Hey, we're not advocating for violence.
So the question was, is there a way for us to have a different assessor in the meantime until we get to the point where we get to elect our assessor? The two ways that I'm familiar with, one would be if Frank were to ask her to leave. So that's an option, right? You guys could all email him and say, hey, ask her to leave. He might listen, or there is a process that I mentioned where the Attorney General can remove an elected official. It's not just elected officials. He can actually remove somebody like in Gail's role as well. And I can't speak for the Attorney General about whether or not he's going to do that. I know somebody that asked him, and he said if people went online to the Attorney General's website, this is the State of Missouri Attorney General, that then you file basically a form that says, I think this government official isn't doing their job, and that kicks off an investigative process. My understanding is that somebody, little birdie told me, might have done that already. But if you want to make sure, you could go on the Attorney General's website yourself and kind of say the same thing. Like, this person didn't do their job, and here's the reasons that I believe that. And that could kick off that process.
And then let me tell you the third thing that we're doing at the state. One is for all you landlords out there, new ordinances in Kansas City are in place. You can't ask their source of income. If they have a Section 8 voucher, you have to take it. These are all rights that you have that you ought to be able to pick your tenant, and now you're not able to. Let me tell you why this is bad for landlords and tenants. I know people,
neighbors, and
neighbors. I know people in this room even who have said, I am no longer renting to anybody in Kansas City. I'm selling my unit. There's a lady back there. I'm selling my units. And you, sir, I'm just not going to do this anymore. I'm going to sell to private equity and get out of Kansas City. So what we're doing is we're hurting the landowners and then we're hurting the people that we're trying to help, people that need housing, because what is private equity going to do when they come in? They're going to jack up the rents, and the people that need housing aren't going to be able to get it. So at the state level, I'd like to address that next year. These are kind of some of the things that we're working on. Again, we just want fair taxation. We want people to have affordable homes. We want Kansas City and Jackson County to be a good place to live. We all want to live here. I want to be here. I want my kids to be here. I want my parents to have an affordable house to live in. These are all the kind of things that we're working on. And I really think it's great that everybody's here as part of this community and asking tough questions and getting answers. And I hope you go back to your friends and your family, tell them to vote, tell them to look at these issues, tell them to look at their elected representatives, because it really is important. It affects everybody in here. It affects our kids too. Yes, ma'am.
Let me ask you a question. If I could just really quickly background on you.
Yeah.
So information about you. I didn't know who you were until maybe a couple months ago.
Yeah.
And the reason I know is because you called me and you happen to be one of us. You're a housing provider in the city of Kansas City. Private property rights are important to you as they are to us. So that you're a champion for housing and creating more housing. So we appreciate that. Another thing is that though you are, your district is, what are the boundaries of your actual house district?
Lee Summit.
Lee Summit, okay. And so those of us who are not in your district, you are important to us as the speaker-elect. Because if you could explain to us what that means when you become speaker, when you're reelected in a couple months, what does that mean and why is it important to all of us?
Well, you know, you have the Missouri legislature, you have the House, you have the Senate, and the speaker gets to decide what are the priorities. And what I can tell you is I'm going to prioritize people like you, people that are property owners, people that pay taxes, people that own homes and try to rent it to other people to provide housing for them. That's a priority for me. And when you hear Stacy say that's going to be something I work on, yeah, I'm going to be in Jeff City working for you and making sure that we're trying to keep your taxes fair and trying to have places for people to live. Yes.
Pretty lady in the colorful dress.
Oh, okay. There's only one up here.
I saw you at one of the meetings when this Jackson County thing unfolded. But would you tell us who you are?
Oh, I am Stacy Johnson Cosby. I happen to be a real estate agent of over 30-something years. I'm with Reese Nichols Plaza office. But I have to say, the reason that I was hosting those events is because I was a former BOE member. I was on the Board of Equalization. So I knew how the process looked. And in 2019, when we started seeing those tax records come out and they were wrong, they were too high, they were wrong, I reached out to a few of my friends in real estate. I'm going to acknowledge them in a second. Lawyers, and we did actual workshops. We did workshops to tell people this is wrong. We don't need to be paid for that. It's something that was just in us, and especially as realtors, protecting our community is something that we needed to do. And so I stepped up, and some of my realtor peers are in this room that actually helped with the workshops, and we sat down one-on-one with taxpayers to help them pull comparables so that when they went to make their case, they had the best possible data, sometimes better than what the county had. And so if I could just have the liberty, any real estate agent that was in this room that helped with those appeals, please stand up. Back here. If you were a real estate agent and you helped, please stand up. Come on, I saw a couple of you. Come on. Thank you. And what I say is that we were like the front line. And so we were appreciative. That's all I am. I'm just a real estate agent who is part of the BOE. And I happen to also be a housing provider and investor. So just a concerned citizen, just like everybody else.
You got a lot of us interested in, you helped me.
Did I? Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Yeah.
Well, very good. Well, we're here to help, and that's why we're here. We're not elected.
Yeah.
We support those who are elected, and we do our role in the community. So, well, I'm not running for anything. Not running.
I'd hate to be running against Stacy, I'll tell you that. Ma'am in red. The county used to say you did, now they're saying you don't. So, yeah, right now their story is that you don't have to, and they're sticking with it.
I'll repeat the question, because some folks over here didn't hear it. It's whether or not for the senior tax credit you have to apply every year. And the answer at this point in time is no.
And that is subject to the collector, the county collector said he would audit, and if he sees too much abuse happening. And the reason that we thought that every year would be good is because that's the only way we know you still live in your house is if you tell us, right? Because you could move out, let your kids move in, and you would still be enjoying the senior tax freeze when you're not really supposed to. So, but for right now, the collector has said, once you've applied, you're in for your lifetime unless we determine that you've moved out, which would be something like maybe your voting record or some other way that we would identify that you had moved out. Mainly if you sell your house, then we'll know because we see the deed change. But at this point, you don't have to reapply every year.
Donna.
Wait, let me. She wants to make, our friend here wants to make an announcement. Somebody's about to get in trouble.
No, not at all. We've got a vehicle with license plate VK9J2G. It's looks like a GMC vehicle that's kind of tan, that's blocking the car that is trying to back out of a parking space. So I need this owner of this car, if you're here, to kind of just pull up a little bit so that.
Is it all the way at the end?
Pardon?
Is there a picture?
Is it all the way at the end?
Oh, she has a picture.
It's got a trail thing on the back or trailer.
Uh-oh.
Yep. All right, now we can talk about it.
Okay, John. And John, we're going to talk about.
Don, I want to take one question, then I want to let Stacy talk. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so for those who are not seniors, not getting a freeze for their social, or not paying taxes on their social security, not getting the senior tax break, the Hancock Amendment applies to the aggregate amount. So for instance, the school district looks at the overall amount of their budget. They cannot get more than a 5% increase due to the Hancock Amendment. However, if there's 12,000 or 14,000 or 20,000 people who are seeing their taxes reduced, the school district's still going to want their 5% increase. So in effect, is this not just a shell game where you're taking tax revenue from one group of people and then placing the burden on the rest of the population? Same thing with the state tax credits and those types of things, because the core issue really is, like with our school district, their budget's increased $80, $90 over 10 years, even though the enrollment has been flat, and now they're still wanting their 5% every year. And so I think there's two parts to this equation. One, yes, I'm all for cutting taxes for seniors. I'm all for cutting taxes for everybody. But we saw how that worked in Kansas when they cut taxes and didn't cut spending. Yeah. So there's two pieces to that equation. So how is that going to work out? If we're cutting a bunch of people's taxes, is everybody else going to be picking up the slack? Or are we looking at overall reducing spending?
That's a really long question. And for the folks at home on Zoom, I'll try to sum it up. And the question is, by giving the senior tax credit and making their taxes never go up, does that mean other people are going to have to pay more in taxes? Mechanically, I can tell you the answer is no. And the reason is that the way this is written, that this SB 190 was written, when a senior gets frozen and gets that credit on their bill, the taxing entities like the school district still have to consider it as though it was paid. Now, John probably doesn't know this, and not any state legislator that I've talked to knows this, but there is a provision in the Missouri State Constitution that says if we ever provide a homestead credit, which is effectively what the senior tax credit is, that the state of Missouri has to make up any revenue shortfall to the taxing entities. Will they do that? I'm looking at Dan just because he's in front of me, but he's a state rep too. Will they do that? I don't know, but the bottom line is when it comes to the Hancock calculation and the fact that entities can only get a 5% increase, with the exception of the Kansas City Public School District, the mechanics of how they specifically wrote SB 190, this senior tax thing, makes it so that the districts have to treat it as though they actually got that money. So this is actually a provision to start to kind of hold a little bit of the line on how much revenue our cities, school districts, even the county get to provide the services that they need. Now, where will that take us over a number of years? It remains to be seen. And we might have to make some adjustments. Maybe the state will have to find other revenue sources, because right now school districts, for example, for the most part, can't have a sales tax. Maybe they need something, I don't know, some of the cannabis money. So there's opportunities and places that we can look, but the bottom line is for you, the fact that a bunch of people applied for the senior tax credit does not make it so that you're going to pay more.
Sir.
Sean, you made a good point there. Back in 95 or 96 with the state casinos, wasn't all that money supposed to go to the schools? And now they're having the sports betting. Isn't that money supposed to go to the schools? Correct. Yeah, and that's the case. Why are we paying taxes for the schools?
Yeah.
There's not that much gambling.
Yeah, let me just take, hey, while we're at it, let me just take a poll. Who in here is in favor of sports betting? Yeah. 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 Schools, the public school budget in Missouri is in the billions. So a few million raised from sports betting isn't going to make that much of a difference. So if anybody tells you this is going to solve school funding, that's just not true. There aren't enough casinos in Missouri to make all the money that we need to pay for our schools. You still need state funding for that. And sports betting will not generate nearly enough revenue to even really help. Yes, sir.
So is it?
Yeah.
You know, we do have a hard.
Yes, sir.
You can clarify something I've heard forever. Is that for all the gambling that started with the horse tracks, and
Yeah.
we've been promised this will go in every lottery, this gambling, river
Yeah.
or boat gambling, now with the sports betting.
Yeah.
That this money would go in, and originally would have had to raise taxes. My understanding is the amount of real estate money is pulled out of the school funds and put in general funds for all the gambling money that comes in. Is that true?
At the county level, I don't think that's true, but I would. No, property taxes are collected locally. So.
Right, but those counties get that money for schools from the state, from the tax.
The tax money from the state? Yeah, but again, the money generated by gambling isn't nearly enough to cover that. Yeah, but they are getting that money.
No money is pulled out of the school budgets and put into the general fund?
No, I mean, we fully fund our education formula every year. So, and then the gambling money goes into that as well. So we are fully funding the foundation formula for education. All right, I think Stacy's going to talk.
And then we're going to, and you can take that if you
Yeah,
want. And then
yes,
we're going to
ma'am.
come, we'll have more time to ask questions still too.
Okay, I'm sorry to go back to the landlord question.
Yeah.
Are you saying we cannot ask their income?
We're going to talk about
In
that.
Kansas City, you can't ask for the source of income. And Stacy knows more about this, but in Kansas City, you can't ask for the source of income.
We're going to talk about that.
That's the new ordinance. Yeah, so you have to hire attorneys to get through all that.
And we're
Yes.
going to discuss it.
I'd like to ask a question on the landlord issue,
Uh-huh.
kind of from the tenant point of view.
Yeah.
Why are these landlords, and especially out-of-state corporations that never even come to our area,
Yeah.
allowed to have giant apartment buildings that are not fit for human habitation, and nobody seems to be able to do anything about it?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a local issue, and whether or not you believe corporations should be able to own apartment buildings, that's kind of a freedom of ownership issue. Why they're allowed to.
Why do they not have to fix it so it's
Yeah.
livable?
I think there are rules in place already for that. You can't have a place that's not livable.
That's exactly right. I was going to say that. It's up to
I
the
think the
city.
rules are in place, is what I'm saying.
It's up to the city to enforce the code because we know those codes are in place. If
Yeah.
they won't enforce them, there are some people that will not do the work they're supposed to. And so I think all of us say, city, enforce the code, because having those properties and people living in those conditions, it's not right. It's simply not right. And so,
I think it's a good segue.
oh,
Ashley wants me to
Or
make
not?
one quick announcement. If there's anybody here who came and wants to fill out their senior property tax application tonight, she's at the back. So don't create a big cluster back there, but just, if you look back there in the corner and nobody's being helped and you want to do it while you're here, anytime is a good time. We got about a half hour left, by the way, the place shuts down.
And is the application something they can take with them?
I think she has, Ashley, do you have paper applications too? Ashley, do you have paper apps too?
Are you gonna talk?
So there's paper apps back there too, or you can do it online. I'm gonna try to shut up now.
Okay, that's fine, because
I guess the question on those paper apps, is it wise to send it certified mail or something to have proof that this is at all?
I personally like.
keep that on, we may be talking to you. You may be asking questions or talking to you. Okay.
Recently, I was told by the postmaster that express mail is the only one that they are doing a high level tracking on. So certified mail is no longer at the level it was, because I can have my stuff in my county.
So use express mail?
Crowdsource says express mail is better than certified.
Express mail is better than certified. Okay, so we'll just, oh, come on. Is this my luck? Is this me? Okay, so we're gonna, come on, technology. So we're going to talk a little bit about housing too while we wait for that to come up, because we mentioned how many of us in the room are housing providers, and we use that term instead of landlords as a more positive term, and it more accurately reflects what we do. Most of us, of course, are great, good housing providers. People that don't want to buy need to be able to rent. These people are your neighbors. So you may say some of the stuff we're talking about tonight, why is it important to you? Because they're your neighbors. John touched on some of the laws in the city of Kansas City. We're going to talk about those a little bit because we want to make sure he hears us when he gets to Jeff City, and we can do something about it at the state level, since the city won't do right. But keep in mind, the people who put those laws in place, their goal is for them to spread not only across the state and other cities and other areas, but to spread across the country. And so we need to stop some of these things that you're going to hear about. We need to stop them before they spread to your neighborhood or across the country. Can you hear me okay in the back? Oh, too much noise in the back? Is that it? Okay. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. If in the corner, Ashley. Can we wait a little bit on that, because the noises are a little distracting. So if it's possible, we can get through this and then they can just pick up the applications if possible. Okay, thank you. Is it better? Can you hear me now? Are you okay now? Okay, I'll try to talk loudly. I'm such a quiet person, not. Hey, why'd you laugh? You know, and something else I'll mention too. Sean happens to be a housing provider as well. So he provides housing in addition to what John does. And so what I want you to know is, and a lot of people don't realize this, but the average housing provider is the typical housing provider is someone who owns 10 units or less. We're talking about the big corporations. In our area, the Mid-America Regional Council did a survey. There are only, of the big corporations, only 8,000 of those units are owned by them. The rest of them are people like us, everyday people that we take care of our business and we follow the laws. And so when we're talking about the big monster out there, it's not pervasive in our area yet. Even though 8,000 is a lot, it's not pervasive. This is it. Thank you. And so if you look at this chart, you can't see it real well. What it shows is this is 1 quarter, and I just want you to know who we are when we talk about landlords or housing providers. 1 quarter in 2023, the majority of those units are gray. Those are people like me that own 9 units or less. Like my husband and I, we own 9 units or less. We are typical. So in this particular chart, in that 1 quarter of the sales of properties, 125,000 sales were made with people like me. The corporations, only 1,900. So it's more likely that those landlords that we're talking about are people like us. It's a little more than that. Mom and pop at the top, small landlords. There are more of us than institutional landlords. There are probably almost 20 million of us versus about 300,000 or so of the big ones. So most of the times we're talking about bills with landlords, they're talking about people like us. 8,000, again, in our area, only about 8,000 units are owned by the corporate investors. So Jen, if you can come on up, and then Dan, please be ready. We're going to talk about the laws in the city of Kansas City, Missouri. If you have questions about that, it's going to be real important for you to know what these laws are, because they're impacting you. And they not only impact us as housing providers, but they impact private property rights. What I'm going to tell you about, one of the laws we're going to talk about today, doesn't impact just renters, but it impacts people who are going to sell their homes. But Jen's going to talk about the Tenant Bill of Rights, which came into place. Is anybody familiar with KC Tenants in our area? They can't hear me?
I'll talk loud, don't worry.
Okay.
My voice carries.
Okay. Is anybody in the room familiar with Casey Tennis? You may have seen them on the news in yellow shirts, chaining themselves to the courthouse doors and disrupting meetings. Okay, that group is behind a lot of this. But what you must know is that our mayor and the majority of our council are with them. And anytime they write ordinances, the ones we're going to talk about tonight, the council and the mayor are with them. And my sister tells me not to say this too much, but they're socialists. Their policies are very different than ours. And sometimes I sound like a conspiracy theorist. If you didn't hear what you're going to hear from us tonight about what's happening to private property rights, you wouldn't believe it. I wouldn't believe it, but it is happening and we need to be aware of it. So when it's time for elections, we can look at who's running for office and we can make sure that those who are in office and running for office, where'd he go? I lost him. That they are aware. We ask them the questions of how they feel about socialism, because it is pervasive in our city, and it's going to be in our state if we don't stop it, and across the country. Jen, if you could talk about the Tenant Bill of Rights, I'm going to give you this so that people on Zoom can hear you.
Thank you, Stacy, and thank you everyone for coming out. Before anybody else leaves, what I'm going to ask you is tell 5 people to make a voting plan. Why is this important? In the last election, only approximately 14% of registered voters in the city of Kansas City showed up. That is embarrassing to our area, and if you don't like the socialists and you don't like them taking your rights, gosh darn it, get people out to vote. If we don't do that, we are doomed. So please make a voting plan, ask 5 people to show up and vote. Now, what Stacy said about the Kansas City City Council is absolutely right. In 2019, they enacted what was called a Tenants Bill of Rights. And I'm sure they intended to do good things with this. A lot of times I think we have the same goal, but we have very different ways to go about it. And what this Tenants Bill of Rights did was start to restrict what you as a property provider could ask when someone wanted to rent your property. It made homes less safe in Kansas City, Missouri. With the most recent ordinance, they have restricted what you can ask about criminal behavior. As a matter of fact, you can only ask someone now if they have had a sexual or a violent offense. I cannot ask them if they have drug behavior, armed robbery, any of this other stuff. Well, I guess armed robbery would be considered violent. But again, this is up to the person filling out the application to tell you. And you are not allowed to ask outside of that. So in 2019, I saw the writing on the wall. And when we talk about corporations come in, I will apologize to you in advance, but money is green. And so when you start to sell your properties because you are trying to survive yourself, because they are literally taking your rights in front of your face, sometimes corporations come in to buy. And I can tell you that I had a street of duplexes on Northwest 71st Terrace in the Park Hill School District in the Northland. A corporation did, in fact, come in and buy those properties. What happened to the tenants is embarrassing for our city. They no longer had hot water. They raised their rents. They took their lawn care. So not only did they pay more money, they no longer had the same services that I had been providing them for the 17 years that I had invested in those properties. All because they don't want me to discern who lives in my property. Who are your neighbors? I don't call it discrimination, I call it discernment. But the city council will tell you you are discriminating. I don't agree with that, do you? No. But what I can tell you is that when I've sat in council meetings and listened to our city council people discuss these measures, they argue about asking the citizens for more information about the laws that they are in fact going to place on them. Don't you think more information would be better? Yes. They don't. I've listened to them argue for 45 minutes about obtaining more information to make good law. It is absolutely unbelievable what is happening in our city. It is successful despite itself. It's unbelievable. But currently, I believe we are on a downhill roll. And if we don't change something, and you don't ask your friends and family to make a voting plan, this is going to do nothing but continue. So in 2019, I sold over 70 housing units that I owned in Kansas City. With this latest legislation that will no longer allow me to ask about criminal behavior, it will no longer allow me to ask about source of income, it will no longer allow me to screen them appropriately, because now who knows who's living next to who? What if there's a mother, a single mother living next door with their children, and somebody very dangerous moves in next door because they hid something? Well, you can be fined if you ask these questions, $1,000. That's double the normal fines in the city.
Yeah.
By the way, you know, I spoke to codes earlier. The city already had codes in place to take care of these rental issues that we were experiencing in the city. It's unbelievable what they're doing. It's unbelievable the rights that they're taking. They don't tell the car wash people not to have red cars, right? You can't service red cars anymore. They shouldn't be in our property business.
Jen, so stay close by. If you can give your microphone, but if you can stay up here, if there are any questions. And the tenant bill of rights also, one of the things that happens if a housing provider violates the tenant bill of rights is that, you know, giving the tenant, you know, a copy of the bill of rights and making sure you give them the utility company information and putting certain things in your lease. If you don't do that, you can go to jail for up to 6 months. Kansas City, Missouri. And so that's something that's important to know, one of the penalties there in addition to the fines. Dan Kelly is an attorney. So, and Jen's part of our Casey Regional Housing Alliance and a realtor, a broker as well as being a property, a housing provider. And Dan is an attorney. He's a real estate attorney, and he's been with us from the beginning dealing with all of these laws. And he's been at the table with us when we're talking to the council and trying to make sense of it. Will you talk a little bit about the right to counsel law, if you would?
Okay. In June of 22, the city council passed a law that said that any tenant within the city limits of Kansas City who's being evicted is entitled to an attorney paid for by the city.
And by, no, not the city, by the taxpayers,
Well,
by us.
So before they passed this legislation, we went to the city council and we explained to them that 92% of evictions in Kansas City is when the tenant fails to pay their rent. And that we said, if you're wanting to spend this money on attorneys, but if you spend this money on rental assistance, 100% of the dollars spent will prevent evictions because you pay the rent for the tenant, the eviction goes away.
Can you talk a little louder?
I don't know if I can.
Maybe move closer in and
But
project, because the microphone you have there is for Zoom.
Okay.
But the room, if you can yell for the room.
So the organization Casey Tenants said that they would not support anything that put $1 in the pocket of a landlord. They would rather waste the money on attorneys defending these evictions than allow landlords to get $1. And the city council, as has been said, follows their lead. And so this ordinance passed. So before the ordinance passed, a typical eviction, I would charge $250 plus the actual costs. But I've had evictions this year where I had to charge $2,500 for an eviction. That at the same time this ordinance went into effect, most of the judges that handle evictions turned over, and we have new judges. And so they didn't have experience with evictions, and they didn't have experience with tenants, and they didn't have that much knowledge of landlord-tenant law. And they are following the lead of the city attorneys. So now a typical eviction would be tried if they asked for a trial within 1 week. Now that they have attorneys, in order for the attorneys to earn their money, they are requesting trials on every single eviction, whether there are issues at stake or not. The only issue at stake is whether they paid the rent, they're still asking for a trial. So now there are so many trials that instead of getting your trial within 1 week, it's taking up to 6 to 8 weeks to get your trial from your court date. So this is extending evictions. That's an extra 2 months without rent for the landlords. And every time that we come up with a solution for what they're doing, they try and earn their money a different way. So they've started asking for discovery from the landlords in a rent and possession action. They will ask for a jury trial, which could delay things for up to six months to a year to get a jury trial in Kansas City. They just keep trying to earn their keep by treating evictions as if they're complicated lawsuits when the legislature intended it to be a very quick, very simple action, which just was a determination of whether or not there was rent owed.
Okay.
I could go on for a long time.
Right. And so I'll tell you that if you hold that, just in case you need to say something else, hold on to it, Dan. This law, when it went into effect, they asked the council, the group asked the council for $2.5 million for this particular law. Keeping in mind, the number one reason that people are evicted is because they don't pay the rent. Over 90% plus of evictions for not paying rent. And so when I testified in council, I said, if you have, when it's at the end, it's too late, a lawyer cannot help them. Because if you don't pay the rent, the judge is going to order the eviction. I said, why don't we use that money up front in rental assistance and get the rent paid? That's a better use of our taxpayer dollars. They voted no, and the vote was almost unanimous against.
There's three
using that money.
people that believe you're right still.
Well, and this was the last council, I think, only one person. And so it's a minority no matter what. And so when that happened, my husband and I looked at each other that night. We decided to sell some of our properties in Kansas City, Missouri. We sold 13 units. They housed, most of them housed formerly homeless veterans. We said, we're not dealing with this anymore if it happens. We still have some, and we're watching what happens before we make a decision, but we're looking for somewhere else to invest our money and to be good housing providers. And so that is out there, and those are our taxpayer dollars. Each time the budget comes back, they're funding more and more of that. So when it's budget time and it's about to come up, you need to speak out and say, I don't want my dollars to pay for someone who did not pay their rent. Because as you know, and Dan said, the time that when they're evicted, we will never get that money. We never see that judgment. We'll never get those dollars. And then on top of that, we're paying for their attorney, and then we're paying for our attorney. And it's just not fair.
And Stacy, there's some people in here that may say, why does this apply to me? I'm just a homeowner. I don't, necessarily want to delve in that. Look up homesguarantee.com. And the reason that this can affect you is because they do not believe that private ownership of property should exist. Period. That is why you should care. Homesguarantee.com.
Okay,
it's bigger than that, Troy. It's way bigger than that, guys.
It's a national movement. Their headquarters out of Chicago. The leader of one of their leaders here lives in Kansas City for this group out of Chicago. Again, their policy, like Jen said, it's on a slide, but we'll move through it quickly. Their policy, socialists do not believe that anyone should own real estate except the government.
And so that's why every person in this room must be dedicated to this change, because we are losing our rights.
And it's called People's Action because they think housing is a right. It should be guaranteed to everyone. Housing is a human right. And if that's the case, then anyone should be able to live wherever they want, whether they qualify or not. I'm going to talk about this last, the law that just passed and went into effect August 1st, source of income. And you heard John talk about this. Jon Peterson talked about this law, source of income law. As of August the 1st, this law went into effect in Kansas City. We fought against it. We met with the council members and we tried to provide reasoning saying this is not going to work. What it is it says that you cannot discriminate against someone based on their source of income. So if someone has, for example, a Section 8 voucher, you can't say no. If someone has cash from some job that they work, you can't say no. I can't say I want a paycheck stub for the last year to show that you've worked a job. I can't do that. If someone has income coming from any other source, Social Security, anything else, you cannot say no. We cannot discriminate based on source of income. So what they did, and I have an attorney behind me, what they did is they expanded the protected classes. So instead of race, religion, familial status, handicap, national origin, all of that, they've added source of income, which means that as a housing provider, if I say no, then they're going to dial 311, the tenant group, they're going to dial 311, they're going to make a discrimination complaint against me with the Civil Rights Division. Something else, so that law is in place in 130 something cities right now in the country. We want it stopped. And this is where Jon Peterson comes in, because one of the legislation that he's talking about will directly address this law and it will cut it off. Something else in this law that's different than what they've done anywhere else that makes this law more radical is the fact that I can also, like Jen was saying, I cannot say no if someone has a prior eviction. And we already talked about that. If you have a prior eviction, that means you didn't pay your rent. I have to say yes to them. If you have a criminal or arrest history that I don't like, I can't say no. They have prior property damage, so they damaged the last rentals. I can't say no. Prior eviction, I can't say no. And so the problem, and we sat down with the council members and we got some of those things tweaked. And so now we have to wait, it has to be over a year. But if I say no to any of those people, call me and I don't rent to them. If I say no, I'm going to have a $1,000 fine. I may have to pay $500 for a class for them to teach me how to do my business that I've been doing for almost 30 years. I could lose my permit and my ability to do business with rental properties. Oh, I can also go to jail for up to 6 months if I reject someone that I mentioned. How does that sound, Kansas City? Who wants that in your city? And so that's one of the things, Jon Peterson, that's one of the things that this man is going to hopefully fix for us, because that bill went before the legislators in Jeff City and it passed out of the House And I think it made it almost out of the Senate, but one of the senators, an area senator, threatened to filibuster it, but said she won't if it comes back again. So when you see the source of income bill coming back at the state level, it is meant to preempt Kansas City, which means it will stop Kansas City from putting that law in place. If you see something about that, please reach out to elected officials and say we support this. And if you have a Democratic elected official, those are the ones that we were concerned about in this particular case that supported it. We need to let them know that that's a violation of private property rights. So we need to be very clear about what we support. And keeping in mind, like Jen says, why is that important to you? Do you want me to not screen who's moving in next to you? We need those people screened, and they need to be credit worthy just like we had to be. No excuses. And so that's something that we're working on, that we're looking at. There is something else that, another law that is coming up. Is there anybody here from the Builders Association, Home Builders Association? I thought someone would be here tonight. But there's another law from this same Kansas City City Council put in place that caused let me show you real quick. The applications, Sean mentioned this, caused the applications to drop by 74%. By the point this was taken in February, the building permits for Kansas City, Missouri, the builders, because of the IECC, the building codes that this same city council put in place, the builder said, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing business in Kansas City. It would have added an average of about $32,000 to an average sales price of a new home. Now, what business person, that builder, wants to do business in a city that would cause them to have their prices higher? And how many home buyers want to have to pay $32,000 more per house or whatever it is? And so it caused the other surrounding municipalities, their permits increased by 179% while ours dropped. That's why we don't have new housing in Kansas City, Missouri. Sheridan.
Was this in regard to them saying because they had to have these new sustainable
all of that
practices?
Yes, and there's another activist.
Kansas City get money for that?
And then I don't know if they got money for it. But whatever it is, there's another active. Just like the tenant group is an activist group, people who own nothing. This activist group who was lobbying the council of this building codes, they own nothing either. So it's a
quick comment on that.
If you would.
So as someone who works with first-time home buyers, I'm 33 years old, so most of my clients are first-timers.
Time to go.
If
We gotta
they
go.
do want
Okay.
to buy a newer home, the fact that the city is not allowing these builders to add, I hear conversations all the time of them trying to make home prices that for brand new homes cost under $300,000.
Not gonna happen.
So if you're saying they only approved 11.
Right, is that what Sean said?
You
11.
said it earlier?
I mean,
Only
yeah.
11.
The builders aren't building here because they're smart.
It makes sense why we're not even seeing those more affordable homes being built.
That's right.
Because they don't want to do it.
That's
How
right.
can it be affordable
Right.
if it's over 300?
And they're just like with the housing providers, we're going to leave the market. And when we leave, just like Jen, the people who bought our properties were out-of-state investors. We didn't want that, but they were paying what we needed to be paid. So they're running the local housing provider, family business. They're running us out of business. Doug, and then I'm going to say something else that we're going to wrap up shortly.
Or if you sell them to individuals and families, then that takes those rentals out of the pool and rent just goes up and up. And then there are more homeless people.
And then more, people who don't have housing, because the investors, every single one of them that bought our properties, the rents went up. One of them, they doubled. And so our homeless veterans, where are they now? I don't know. But the city ran me out because I didn't want to do business with the city. I'm going to talk about before, and we're going to wrap up with John and Sean, and then see if there are any questions for any of us. Another law that is coming that I want you all to hear about because it's going to be coming. Has anyone heard of just cause eviction or good cause eviction? Okay, so this is a law that is spreading. It's in California, it's in New York, and if they had their way, it's coming here too. What it says is that that tenant that's in that property can stay in your property for as long as they want to, in perpetuity. You cannot remove them. There's no such thing as a 12-month lease. And so if you had, let's say, a 12-month lease, and you said at the end of it, I want to do something with my property, want to move in, want to renovate it, want to sell it to a family member, there's a very real possibility that you can go to your tenant and say, hey, I want you to leave, it's good doing business with you. And they can say no. They can stay in your property. And in real estate, we call that a life estate. And what they're doing in California to get people out of their properties, they're paying them $50,000, $100,000 to remove them from the properties. That is happening in our country today. And if we don't stop the laws, that is one of their goals. Their ultimate goal is that everybody lives free, social housing. When you start seeing the city council talk about social housing, that's the project. They want us taxpayers to fund free housing for people who can work themselves. And so we're saying all of this, and some of you are hearing this for the first time, and in this environment, we wanted to share it so that you can be aware that it's coming. We wanted our elected officials to know that this is happening and what our thoughts are about it, and that we say it must stop. So when you see these laws and rent control, we're lucky we have rent control preempted at the state level where they can't put that in place, because again, that's them telling me what rents I can charge and capping my profits, my business. They don't do it to grocery stores yet. They don't do it anywhere else, but they're going to do it to someone like us who owns houses, provide housing in our community. Stacy wants to say something. That's another real estate attorney. And then we're going to wrap this up and take a couple questions and hear final comments.
Thank you for taking my question. My name is Stacy Cohn-Bright. Like Mr. Kelly, I'm a real estate attorney. I've been handling landlord-tenant matters for corporations and for small landlords for 30 years in Kansas City. And I'm here tonight because of that, but also my home is in Jackson County. And I'm one of the people that have those egregious ugly assessments, reassessments. And so that's one of the reasons I'm here tonight. But also I wanted to mention that, and to affirm what Mr. Kelly was saying, that having opposing counsel in eviction cases has made it much more expensive for my clients. And obviously there's a great deal of delay. There's one of the firms that routinely represents tenants. In every single case where they've entered, they've filed an answer with a counterclaim alleging that the home is uninhabitable, which seems improbable when we're talking about every single case. And so it's really an issue of lack of due process, unequal protection, where one side in the civil lawsuit is getting free counsel, and yet the landlords have to shell out.
We all have to shell out.
If somebody's getting their car repossessed, they don't get free counsel.
Right.
And, the finance company is able to go through the typical legal process that's been in place all this time.
And that's important.
Landlords are getting screwed out of it.
And that's important because those are our tax dollars. And even wealthy people being evicted, there's no cap on their income. You can be wealthy and still get a free taxpayer-funded attorney.
Any tenant can be represented and no landlords get free.
Right. And so I have 5 minutes. I have 5 minutes.
I just want to reemphasize that there's this general feeling about these other groups like AC Tenants and other groups around the country that cancel rent. And together with these issues about no private property and those things, I just wanted to mention that my husband, Stephen Bright, is running for State House in District 25, which is like from the plaza to about 435 between State Line and about.
Do you have his paperwork you can share? Because we have like 4 minutes. Do you have his?
Okay, I just wanted to mention.
Okay.
StephenBright.net. He's on our side for property tax reduction, landlord rights.
All right. Thank you, Stacy. As we wrap up, I wanted to show, to bring it full circle, property taxes. We have a housing provider that owns 70 properties. At the end of the year last year, his taxes went up by $50,000. And so when you look at that, he had to write that check by the end of the year. When we keep hearing them saying that tenants are cost burdened, we're cost burdened, and they're complaining about why the rents are so high. The rents are high because our costs are high. The materials, the labor, the insurance, if you can get it. And then the property taxes, $50,000 a year. If you divide that out, that's $700 per unit. Is he going to raise the rent by $700,000? I mean, $700 a month? No, he can't. But this is a burden that we face with the taxes, and his taxes were wrong. And so they're trying to add rent control. They say we're price gouging. No, we're just reflecting the market. And then something you said, Stacy, they're about to go on rent strike now. They're having people in the two of the buildings that have been in the news lately, this group, are having people go on rent strike. But they don't tell those people they're going to be not paying their rent, they're going to damage their credit, maybe end up evicted, all in the name of going on rent strike to formalize their union. And so they're trying to get power. We just need to know who they are. And so I think we're going to end it there. I'm going to show you a chart. This is the what Jen was talking about. This is this here. You can Google it, people's action, how they want social housing, free housing, make it harder for developers and builders to do business. And these laws do exactly that and decommodify housing. They don't think socialists that housing should be for sale. And then these are some of the laws. I'm not going to talk about them, but look on the screen. These are the tenant protection laws that are in place across this country, and they're trying to put in places across this country. They exist and they're there, and we need to stop them. That's it. And so anyway, I say that to say our elected officials or Jon Peterson, if you want to wrap up, he's here. So if you want to wrap up with any questions, we wanted you to hear this. And then hopefully you had a lot of questions and I hope you had a chance to ask your questions. If not, we have.
Thank you to you guys for showing up.
Yeah, and we had access to them for a little bit, and then we'll do it again if it's helpful at some point. Is it helpful to have town halls like this? Okay, so we'll come back again and do it again. And so we thank our elected officials.
So I personally never sleep. I'll be out by my pickup truck if anybody else has questions. The facility closes down at 8, so we really do have to wrap up. John, do you have any concluding remarks?
No, I just want to say thank you. This is what we need to be
yeah,
doing more of.
thank you everybody for being here. Sorry about the technical glitches, the heat, the small room size, all of that, but hopefully this was valuable. And I'll be out in the parking lot. No. So because the town